My name is Maya Harrison, and I'm 42 years old. 6 months ago, I lost everything in a California divorce court. My home, my children, my entire identity as a mother. My ex-husband Derek walked away with our $4.2 million house and full custody of our daughters. As the judge read the verdict, Derek actually smirked at me and whispered, "You'll never see them again." Those words shattered something inside me that I thought could never break. I fled to my late mother's basement in Ohio, the only place left that was mine. While cleaning out that musty space, I discovered something behind the old furnace, a hidden safe I'd never known existed. The combination? My birthday. Inside was a letter that began with words that changed everything. "If you're reading this, they've finally found you." What I discovered in that safe didn't just give me my life back. It revealed a truth about power, justice, and the strength we never know we have until we're forced to use it. Before we begin, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy this story. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let me take you back to where it all started. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. Derek had always made sure I knew my place in our marriage. "You wouldn't understand the contracts, Maya. You didn't even finish college." He'd say it casually, like stating the weather, usually in front of his business partners at dinner parties. I'd smile and refill the wine glasses, playing the perfect hostess, while something inside me slowly died. I'd left college in my junior year when I got pregnant with Sophie. Derek was already climbing the corporate ladder at his real estate firm, and we both agreed, or rather, he decided and I accepted, that one of us should be home with the baby. "It just makes sense," he'd said, holding my hand across the kitchen table. "I'm already making 6 figures. You can always go back to school later." Later never came. Emma arrived 2 years after Sophie, and suddenly, I was a full-time mother in a beautiful California house, watching my husband build his empire while I organized playdates and PTA meetings. Derek controlled every penny. I had a credit card for groceries and household expenses, but every purchase over $100 needed his approval. "It's not that I don't trust you," he'd explain when I questioned it. "I'm just better with finances. It's what I do." The truly insidious part? He made me believe I was lucky. Here I was, living in a multi-million-dollar home, driving a luxury SUV, raising 2 beautiful daughters. What right did I have to complain? But isolation is a slow poison. Derek had systematically made me dependent on him for everything, financially, socially, even emotionally. By year 15 of our marriage, I couldn't imagine a life without him. I should have imagined harder. Because Derek certainly had. He'd been planning his exit for 2 years. The loneliness hit different after Derek filed for divorce. Our mutual friends, his friends who I'd thought were ours, suddenly developed scheduling conflicts whenever I called. "Oh, Maya, I'd love to grab coffee, but things are just so crazy right now." Even Sarah, whose daughter had been Sophie's best friend since kindergarten, stopped returning my texts. I understood the social mathematics. Derek was the one with the country club membership, the one who hosted the investment opportunities, the one whose holiday party invitations actually mattered. I was just the wife, ex-wife, soon to be nobody. My mother had passed away 3 years earlier, my father when I was 12, no siblings. The family I'd built with Derek was all I had, and he was methodically dismantling it piece by piece. His lawyer came from Preston, Kilbourne and Associates, the kind of firm with marble lobbies and partners who golfed with judges. My legal aid attorney, sweet as she was, kept apologizing for things that hadn't even happened yet. "I need to be honest with you, Maya," she'd said at our second meeting, shuffling through papers she could barely keep organized. "They have 3 senior partners on this. I'm doing my best, but—" The but hung between us like a verdict already decided. David versus Goliath, except David didn't even have a sling this time, just a borrowed suit and a legal aid attorney who took the bus to court. Then, 3 weeks before the final hearing, Derek played his ace. He'd already moved the majority of our assets into business investments that somehow didn't count as marital property. The house, it turned out, was now owned by an LLC that predated our marriage by 6 months. Even our savings account had been steadily drained into company expenses. I'd been erased before I even knew I was being written out. The courtroom felt like a theater where everyone knew their lines except me. Derek sat with his team of lawyers, 3 men in identical charcoal suits who moved in practice synchronization. I had Janet, my legal aid attorney, who kept dropping her pen and whose voice shook when she addressed the judge. "Your Honor," Derek's lead attorney began, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "We have evidence of Mrs. Harrison's erratic behavior and emotional instability that raises serious concerns about her fitness as a primary caregiver." My stomach dropped. What evidence? Then they played the recordings. Derek had been recording me during my worst moments, crying after my mother's death, yelling in frustration when he'd forgotten Emma's recital for a business meeting, the panic attack I'd had when I found out about the divorce. All edited, all out of context, all devastating. "She's unstable," Derek testified, his face a mask of concern. "I worry about our daughter's safety. Just last month, she forgot to pick Emma up from soccer practice." I wanted to scream that I'd been at the emergency room with Sophie, who'd broken her finger at school, that Derek knew this, that he'd been the one who told me to stay with Sophie while he handled Emma. But when Janet tried to explain, her words came out jumbled, uncertain. The judge, a stern woman who'd barely looked at me since we'd started, finally spoke. "Mrs. Harrison, do you have any evidence to counter these claims?" Evidence. Everything I had was in Derek's name, on Derek's computers, in Derek's control. Even my own memories felt like hearsay against his documented proof. "Your Honor, my client," Janet started, then stopped, shuffling through her papers desperately. The judge's expression said everything. The decision was already made. I was just watching the formal conclusion of my own erasure. "Full physical custody to Mr. Harrison," the judge announced, each word a nail in my coffin. "Mrs. Harrison will have supervised visitation, twice monthly, pending successful completion of court-mandated counseling." Supervised visitation, like I was some kind of danger to my own daughters, the ones I'd raised, nursed through fevers, taught to tie their shoes and read and dream. 2 afternoons a month, with a court-appointed stranger watching my every move. The financial ruling came next. The house, our house, where Emma had taken her first steps, where Sophie had lost her first tooth, went to Derek. The property is demonstrably owned by Mr. Harrison's LLC, established before the marriage. The investments, the savings, even the car, all Derek's. I was granted temporary spousal support of $1,500 a month for 6 months. In California, that wouldn't even cover a studio apartment. Additionally, the judge continued, her voice devoid of emotion, given Mrs. Harrison's current unemployment and lack of stable housing, the court finds it in the children's best interest to limit contact until she can demonstrate financial stability. Financial stability, with no money, no job history for 15 years, and no degree. It was a catch-22 designed to keep me away from Sophie and Emma indefinitely. Derek knew it, his lawyer knew it, hell, even Janet knew it, judging by the way she couldn't meet my eyes. "You'll never see them again." Derek's whisper from earlier echoed in my mind. This wasn't just divorce. It was complete annihilation. He'd taken my children, my home, my future, and somehow made it all look like he was the responsible one protecting our daughters from their unstable mother. I had nothing left to lose because I had nothing left at all. Except, as I would soon discover, that wasn't entirely true. The supervised visitation center smelled like industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. Sophie, my 14-year-old, sat across from me at a plastic table while a social worker pretended to read a magazine in the corner. Emma, 12, wouldn't even look at me. "Dad says you never really wanted us," Emma finally spoke, her voice small and confused. "He says you were planning to leave anyway." My heart shattered. "Emma, sweetheart, that's not—" "Then why didn't you fight harder?" Sophie interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "Dad showed us the court documents. You didn't even contest most of it. How could I explain that I had nothing to fight with? That their father had systematically destroyed every weapon I might have used? They were too young to understand the kind of calculated cruelty Derek had deployed. I love you both more than anything, I managed, reaching for their hands. Sophie pulled away. Dad's girlfriend Madison is nice, Emma said quietly. She's helping redecorate our rooms. Madison, 28 years old, Derek's assistant until 6 months ago. Now sleeping in my bed, redecorating my daughter's rooms, erasing every trace of me from their lives. The social worker looked at her watch. 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes of watching my daughters slip away from me. Derek had done something worse than taking them. He'd turned them against me. He'd painted himself as the stable, successful father protecting them from their broken mother. And the worst part? Part of me was starting to believe it too. When the visit ended, Sophie hugged me briefly, stiffly. Emma just waved. As I watched them walk back to Derek's Mercedes, where Madison waited in the passenger seat, my seat, I realized this was exactly what he'd planned. Complete victory, witnessed by the state of California. I drove back to Ohio that night. Mom's basement in Worthington, Ohio, was a time capsule of my childhood. Boxes labeled Maya's school things and Christmas decorations 1987 lined the walls, covered in 20 years of dust. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd gone from a $4.2 million California estate to a moldy basement in the Midwest, right back where I'd started. For 3 days, I didn't move from the pull-out couch. The basement smelled of mildew and forgotten dreams, and somehow that felt appropriate. I'd failed at everything: marriage, motherhood, even basic survival in the adult world. Derek was right. I was nothing without him. By day 4, the smell got to me. If I was going to live here, I could at least clean. Mom would have hated seeing her basement like this, even if she'd barely used it the last decade of her life. So I started moving boxes, sweeping corners that hadn't seen light in years. That's when I found it, behind the old furnace, hidden by a piece of loose paneling that fell away when I moved a stack of Christmas decorations. A safe, built into the wall. Not some cheap hardware store model, but a serious piece of equipment with a digital lock. My hands shook as I stared at the keypad. Who puts a safe behind a furnace? Mom had lived simply, a retired schoolteacher with a modest pension. She'd never mentioned anything about. The keypad waited. 4 digits. I tried her birthday. Nothing. Dad's birthday. Nothing. Their anniversary. Still nothing. Then, almost as an afterthought, I entered my birthday. 02315. The lock clicked open. Inside were 3 things: a thick manila envelope, a leather journal, and a single white envelope with my name written in Mom's careful script. My hands trembled as I reached for the letter. The first line stopped my heart. If you're reading this, they've finally found you. I need to pause here for just a moment. If you've ever felt like everything was taken from you, like you were powerless against someone who held all the cards, I want you to know you're not alone. Sometimes our greatest strength comes from the most unexpected places. Drop a comment sharing where you find your strength. I read every single one. And if this story is resonating with you, please hit that like button. It really helps other people who might need to hear this message find it too. Now let me tell you what was in that letter. Mom's handwriting was steady, deliberate, nothing like the shaky script from her final years. The letter was dated 5 years ago, 2 years before her death. My darling Maya, if you're reading this, they've finally found you. Or rather, you've finally found yourself in a position where you need what I've left behind. I pray I'm wrong, but mothers know things. Derek isn't who you think he is, and you're not who you think you are either. My hands shook. How did she know? I've watched him isolate you, diminish you, make you small. I've wanted to intervene so many times, but I knew you'd defend him. Love makes us blind, sweetheart. So instead, I prepared for the day when you'd need help and be ready to accept it. The next paragraph made me sit down hard on the basement floor. I wasn't just a school teacher, Maya. For 30 years, I taught high school by day and built something else entirely by night. Every extra dollar, every summer tutoring session, every weekend job, it all went into real estate. Not in my name, of course. That would have been too obvious. Through LLCs, trusts, holding companies, the kind of structures that protect assets from anyone who might want to take them. I pulled out the manila envelope with trembling fingers. Property deeds, bank statements, investment portfolios, all in the name of various companies, but with one common thread. I was listed as the sole beneficiary. The portfolio is worth approximately $50 million as of this writing. The lawyers at Morrison, Chen and Associates have been managing it. Linda Morrison is expecting your call. She's been paid in advance for the next 20 years. 50 million. My mother, who'd clipped coupons and driven a 15-year-old Honda, had built an empire in silence. The letter continued. Power isn't loud, sweetheart. Real power whispers. The leather journal contained everything, every property, every investment, every carefully orchestrated move my mother had made over 3 decades. But it was the sections about Derek that made my blood run cold. June 2019. Derek transferred $500K from joint account to offshore LLC. Maya unaware. September 2020. Derek's company received investment from Maya's inherited funds from her father's life insurance. Documents forged, proof attached. March 2021. Private investigator confirms Derek's affair with assistant. Financial planning for divorce began 18 months before filing. My mother had been watching, documenting, building a case I never knew I'd need. Page after page of evidence, receipts, photographs of documents. She'd known what Derek was before I'd even suspected. But the most shocking revelation came near the end of the journal. Derek Harrison built his real estate empire with Maya's money. The initial $2 million in seed capital came from accounts I'd established in Maya's name when she was born, accounts Derek accessed through forged signatures after their marriage. Every property in his portfolio exists because of theft. The forensic accountants at Morrison and Chen can prove all of it. I sat on that cold basement floor, surrounded by papers that rewrote my entire life story. I wasn't the helpless, discarded wife. I was the victim of calculated financial fraud, and more importantly, I was now armed with everything I needed to prove it. The final entry in the journal was dated just a month before Mom's death. Maya will doubt herself. She'll think she doesn't deserve this, that she didn't earn it. But inheritance isn't just about money. It's about carrying forward the strength of those who came before. The money is just a tool. What matters is what she does with it. I reached for my phone and dialed the number for Linda Morrison. Your mother was brilliant, Linda Morrison said, reviewing the documents in her downtown Columbus office. Unlike Janet, my legal aid attorney, Linda radiated competence. Her suit probably cost more than my temporary support payment. She built an ironclad case. Derek Harrison committed fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. We can prove all of it. But the divorce is final, I said, still struggling to process everything. The judge already ruled. Linda smiled, the kind of smile sharks probably gave before feeding time. Fraud vitiates everything. When one party commits fraud, especially financial fraud of this magnitude, all agreements become null and void, including divorce settlements. She pulled up documents on her laptop. Your mother hired forensic accountants 3 years ago. Every dollar Derek stole is tracked. More interesting, though, she turned the screen toward me, is that, according to these forged documents, you're actually the majority shareholder in Derek's company, have been since 2018. My head spun. That's impossible. I never signed anything. Exactly. He forged your signature to access your funds, but he also inadvertently made you the legal owner of 65% of Harrison Development Group. He's been running your company for 5 years. The irony was delicious. In trying to steal from me, Derek had accidentally given me everything. There's more, Linda continued. Your mother's real estate portfolio includes the building where Derek's hosting his big project launch next month, the Meridian Center in Columbus. She bought it through a shell company 5 years ago. I stared at her. Mom owned the Meridian Center? You own the Meridian Center. And guess who's been desperately trying to buy it for his new development? Derek. He's been negotiating with my office for months, not knowing who the real owner is. Linda leaned back in her chair. So, Maya, how would you like to handle your husband's upcoming launch event? Linda Morrison wasn't just any lawyer. She was a former senior partner at Preston, Kilbourne and Associates, the same firm representing Derek. I left Preston Kilbourne 5 years ago, she explained, organizing our strategy. Your mother was my first independent client. She knew I'd understand how they operate, their tactics, their weaknesses. Over the next 2 weeks, Linda assembled a team that made Derek's lawyers look like law school students, forensic accountants, corporate lawyers, fraud specialists, all paid for in advance by my mother's estate, all working quietly, gathering ammunition. Timing is everything in law, Linda said during one late-night session. It's like chess. You don't just need the right pieces. You need to move them at the perfect moment. She showed me Derek's invitation to his project launch, a glossy affair celebrating his new $100 million development. 500 guests, including major investors, city officials, and media. He'd even sent me an invitation, a cruel gesture meant to show me what I'd lost. He wants to humiliate you publicly, Linda observed. He's counting on you either not showing up or showing up broken. But Maya, this is perfect. In law, we call this an admission against interest. He's inviting you to a public forum where he'll be discussing his business success. I studied the invitation. You want me to confront him there? No, I want you to attend as the majority shareholder of Harrison Development Group. The difference is crucial. You're not the angry ex-wife seeking revenge. You're the legitimate owner conducting business. Linda pulled out another document. There's a clause in the company bylaws, which Derek wrote himself, that allows the majority shareholder to call for immediate leadership review at any official company event. The pieces were falling into place. Derek had built the very weapons that would destroy him. All we needed was the right moment to deploy them. The prenuptial agreement Derek had insisted on became our smoking gun. I'd signed it tearfully 15 years ago, thinking it meant he didn't trust me. Now reading it with Linda, I saw it differently. Article 12, Section 3, Linda highlighted the text. In the event of financial fraud, embezzlement, or breach of fiduciary duty by either party, all protections under this agreement are void, and the injured party is entitled to full restitution plus damages. Derek wrote this? I asked. His lawyers did. They were protecting him from you, never imagining he'd be the one committing fraud. Linda pulled up more documents. Every forged signature, every redirected fund, every hidden asset, it all violates this clause. He essentially wrote a confession into his own prenup. But the real revelation came when we reviewed the timeline. Derek had started moving assets 2 years before filing for divorce. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd used the same forensic accountant for his legitimate business and his illegal transfers. That accountant, facing potential criminal charges, had already agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. We have everything, Linda said. But Maya, I need you to understand something. Once we do this, there's no going back. Derek will be ruined. Completely. His investors will pull out. His reputation will be destroyed. He might even face criminal charges. I thought about my daughters, about Emma asking why I didn't fight harder, about Sophie's tears. What about the girls? Full custody will revert to you immediately. The court doesn't look kindly on parents who commit fraud and parental alienation. Linda's expression softened. Your mother included provisions for your daughters too. Trust funds, college accounts, all protected in waiting. I looked at the invitation to Derek's launch event again. Black tie, cocktails, 500 witnesses to his success. He'll never see it coming, I said quietly. Linda smiled. No, he won't. The invitation arrived via courier, cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. Derek had included a handwritten note. Maya, I thought you should see what real success looks like. Despite everything, I believe in being civilized. The girls will be there. Supervised, of course. Perhaps seeing you accept reality will help them move forward. D. The condescension dripped from every word. He wanted me there as a prop in his triumph, the failed ex-wife watching him soar. Linda read it over my shoulder. He's actually inviting you to witness his own destruction, she mused. There's something almost poetic about it. I turned the invitation over. The Meridian Center, October 15th, 7 p.m. Black tie required, +1 welcome. I'll be your +1, Linda said. As your attorney, it's completely appropriate. We spent the next week preparing, not just legally, but psychologically. Linda brought in a public speaking coach, someone who specialized in high-pressure situations. You're not going there for revenge, the coach reminded me. You're going there to conduct business. Every word should be professional, factual, and calm. Let the facts do the damage, not emotions. We rehearsed different scenarios. What if Derek tried to have me removed? What if he attempted to discredit me publicly? What if the girls were upset? Each possibility was examined, planned for, countered. Remember, Linda said the night before the event. He thinks you're coming as the defeated ex-wife. He has no idea that you own his company, his building, his entire future. The element of surprise is our greatest weapon. I stood in Mom's basement looking at the dress I'd bought. Simple, elegant, expensive for the first time in months. Not the dress of a victim, but of a woman who knew exactly who she was. Are you ready? Linda asked. I thought of Mom's words. Real power whispers. Yes, I said. I'm ready. The Meridian Center gleamed like a jewel in downtown Columbus. Its lobby transformed into Derek's monument to himself. Banners reading, Harrison Development Group, Building Tomorrow's Legacy, hung from the ceiling. 500 guests in designer gowns and tuxedos sipped champagne beneath crystal chandeliers. Derek stood near the entrance with Madison, greeting guests like royalty. She wore the diamond necklace I'd received for our 10th anniversary. He whispered something in her ear and she laughed, touching his chest intimately. Maya. His voice carried perfectly pitched surprise, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. How brave of you to come. Brave, as if attending required courage rather than ownership. I smiled, the kind of smile Linda had taught me, professional, unreadable. Derek, Madison. I nodded to each. The space looks beautiful. Doesn't it? Madison gushed, clearly uncomfortable but trying. Derek's worked so hard on this project. Behind them, I saw Sophie and Emma with Derek's mother. Sophie noticed me first, her eyes widening. Emma turned away. My heart clenched, but I kept my expression neutral. Ladies, Derek addressed a group of nearby investors' wives, his voice carrying. This is Maya, my ex-wife. She's finding her way after our divorce. The women looked at me with that mixture of pity and relief. Pity for my situation, relief it wasn't them. One touched my arm sympathetically. Starting over must be so hard. Actually, I said calmly, I've discovered some incredible opportunities recently. Derek's laugh was sharp. Maya's always been optimistic, though perhaps unrealistically so. More guests gathered, drawn by the subtle drama. Derek was in his element, the successful businessman showing magnanimity to his failed ex-wife. He didn't notice Linda approaching from behind, documents in hand. Mr. Harrison? Linda's voice cut through the chatter. We need to discuss some urgent business. Derek turned, irritated. This is a private event. Yes, I said quietly. My private event. Derek's presentation began at 8 sharp. He stood at the podium, confident and commanding, while slides showcased his newest development, a $100 million mixed-use complex that would transform the Columbus skyline. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice resonating through the room. 5 years ago, I started Harrison Development with nothing but vision and determination. Nothing. I sat at table 12, Linda beside me, listening to him erase my existence from his success story. The inherited money he'd stolen, the forged signatures, the fraud, all transformed into his personal bootstrap narrative. Some people, he continued, glancing at my table, lack the education and sophistication to understand high-level business. They're content with mediocrity. But not me, not Harrison Development. The audience murmured appreciatively. Several people glanced at me with barely concealed pity. Derek was warming up, feeding off their attention. "My ex-wife Maya is here tonight," he announced, gesture magnanimous. "Despite our differences, I believe in being civilized. She's struggling, of course. No degree, no work experience, no understanding of the business world. But we must show compassion to those less fortunate." Sophie looked mortified. Emma stared at her plate. The room held that uncomfortable silence that follows public cruelty disguised as kindness. "Perhaps," Derek continued, smile widening, "Maya would like to say a few words about new beginnings, fresh starts after failure." The spotlight found me. 500 faces turned to watch. Derek stood at the podium, king of his domain, offering the microphone like a weapon for my own humiliation. This was it. The moment he'd orchestrated to destroy the last of my dignity, to show our daughters that their mother was nothing, to prove to everyone that he'd been right to discard me. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress. "Thank you, Derek," I said clearly. "I'd love to address the room." Linda stood with me, briefcase in hand. I walked to the podium with measured steps, aware of every eye tracking my movement. Derek stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy, his smirk visible to everyone. Madison fidgeted at the head table. Sophie and Emma watched with a mixture of fear and hope. "Good evening," I began, my voice steady. "Derek's right. I don't have a business degree. I spent 15 years raising our daughters while he built this company." Derek nodded approvingly, thinking I was playing into his narrative. But Derek left out some important details about how Harrison Development was actually built. I paused, meeting his eyes. "Linda." Linda stepped forward, pulling documents from her briefcase. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Linda Morrison, senior partner at Morrison, Chen & Associates. I represent Ms. Maya Harrison, the majority shareholder of Harrison Development Group." The room went silent. Derek's face shifted from smug to confused. "That's impossible," he said into his microphone. "This is ridiculous." 65% ownership, Linda continued, projecting the documents onto the screen behind us, established through initial capital investment of $2 million, transferred from Ms. Harrison's trust accounts in 2018. The slides Derek had prepared were replaced by bank statements, forged signatures, forensic accounting reports. Each piece of evidence appeared with damning clarity on the 40-foot screen. "What the hell is this?" Derek moved toward us, but hotel security, notified by Linda in advance, stepped forward. "This," I said calmly, "is transparency. Something you taught me the importance of, Derek. Every dollar you used to start this company came from accounts my mother established for me, accounts you accessed through forged signatures." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Robert Sterling, Derek's biggest investor, stood up abruptly. Other investors reached for their phones. The media present began recording. "You can't prove," Derek started. "We can," Linda interrupted. "We have." This is where everything changed. Not just for me, but for my daughters watching their mother finally stand up. If you've ever had to reclaim your power in a public space, you know how terrifying and necessary it can be. I see your comments about finding strength in impossible situations, and they mean everything. Please keep sharing your stories. And if you know someone who needs to hear that power can come from unexpected places, share this video with them. Now let me tell you what happened when the truth finally came out. Thank you, Derek. I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the microphone. You taught me the importance of documentation, of keeping records, of building a paper trail. Linda clicked through more slides. Each one landed like a precision strike, dated transfers, forged signatures highlighted by forensic experts, a clear timeline of fraud stretching back 5 years. Mr. Sterling, I addressed Derek's primary investor directly. You should know that the property assessments Derek provided for your investment were inflated by 40%. The actual valuations are shown here. Sterling's face went from confused to furious in seconds. Other investors started standing, phones out, calling their lawyers. This is defamation, Derek shouted, but his voice cracked. You can't just... Actually, Linda interjected, as majority shareholder, Ms. Harrison can call for an immediate leadership review. It's in the company bylaws. Section 47, which you wrote yourself, Mr. Harrison. I watched Derek's world collapse in real time. The confident businessman was replaced by someone I'd never seen before. Desperate, cornered, small. Furthermore, I continued, this building, the Meridian Center, is owned by my mother's estate. Which means, Derek, you've been negotiating with me for months without knowing it. Madison had disappeared from the head table. Sophie and Emma stared at me with something new in their eyes. Respect, maybe even awe. The forensic accountants from Brennan and Associates are here tonight, Linda announced. They've prepared individual packets for each investor showing exactly how their funds were misappropriated. Men in suits began distributing folders to stunned investors. The elegant launch had transformed into Derek's public execution, and he'd sent the invitations himself. You vindictive... Derek started toward me again. Sir, security intervened firmly. Please remain calm. I looked at my ex-husband, this man who'd tried to erase me, and felt nothing, no anger, no satisfaction, just clarity. I'm not vindictive, Derek. I'm accurate. The screen behind me displayed the final slide, a court order, filed that morning, freezing all of Harrison Development Group's assets pending investigation. This morning at 9 a.m., Linda announced, the Franklin County Court issued an emergency injunction based on evidence of systematic fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. Mr. Harrison's personal assets are also frozen, pending criminal investigation. Derek's legs seemed to give out. He gripped the podium, his face gray. You can't do this. The girls, think about our daughters. I am thinking about them, I said firmly. I'm showing them that actions have consequences, that stealing is wrong, that lying to children about their mother is wrong. Sophie stood up suddenly. Is it true, Dad? Did you steal Mom's money? The room held its breath. Derek looked at his daughter, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Sophie, sweetheart, it's complicated. It's not complicated, Emma said, standing beside her sister. You lied. You said Mom abandoned us, but you took us from her. Robert Sterling approached the podium, his face thunderous. Harrison, I want every cent of my investment returned. Tonight. I can't. The assets are frozen. More investors surrounded Derek, voices rising. His lawyers backed away, already calculating their own liability. The pyramid he'd built on my stolen foundation was collapsing spectacularly. Linda leaned into the microphone. Any investors seeking restitution should contact Morrison, Chen and Associates. As the legitimate majority owner, Ms. Harrison is committed to transparency and legal resolution of all claims. I looked at Derek one last time. The man who'd smirked at me in court, who'd promised I'd never see my daughters again, who'd tried to erase my existence. He looked small, pathetic, exactly what he'd always been beneath the success he'd stolen. The authorities are waiting outside, Linda informed him quietly. I suggest you cooperate. One more thing, I said, the room still in stunned silence. Mom? On the screen appeared a photo of my mother, the quiet schoolteacher who'd built an empire in shadows. Below it, her final letter to me, one paragraph highlighted. My darling Maya, never let anyone make you small. You are the daughter of a woman who built kingdoms in silence and struck like lightning when the moment came. That blood runs in your veins. My mother, Eleanor Chen, wasn't just a school teacher, I told the room. She was a real estate investor who built a $50 million portfolio while everyone underestimated her. Just like Derek underestimated me. I pulled out one final document. Effective immediately, I'm exercising my rights as majority shareholder to remove Derek Harrison as CEO of Harrison Development Group. You need a board vote, Derek protested desperately. No, Linda corrected. According to the emergency provisions you wrote, the majority shareholder can act unilaterally in cases of criminal misconduct. You really should have read your own bylaws more carefully. Sophie and Emma had moved closer to the stage, tears streaming down their faces. Not tears of sadness, but of recognition. Their mother wasn't the failure their father had painted. She was standing in designer heels and a powerful dress, calmly dismantling the man who'd tried to destroy her. Mr. Harrison, security approached. The authorities are requesting your presence outside. As they escorted Derek toward the exit, he turned back one last time. Maya, please. My lawyer will be in touch, I said simply. The ballroom erupted, investors shouting, media filming, chaos everywhere. But in the center of it all, my daughters pushed through the crowd and ran to me. Mom, Sophie sobbed into my shoulder. We're so sorry. We should have known. Shh, I held them both. You're here now. That's all that matters. The boardroom at Harrison Development felt different with sunlight streaming through the windows. 2 weeks had passed since the launch event, and I sat at the head of the table where Derek once ruled. The transition plan is straightforward, I addressed the remaining board members. Jennifer Walsh has agreed to serve as interim CEO. She has 20 years of experience and, more importantly, a spotless reputation. Jennifer nodded from her seat. She'd been Derek's COO, constantly overlooked despite being the actual brains behind most successful projects. What about existing projects? A board member asked. We honor all legitimate contracts, I said firmly. This company will be rebuilt on integrity. Every investor will be made whole, even if it takes years. Linda distributed the restructuring documents. Ms. Harrison is also establishing an oversight committee to ensure complete transparency going forward. And your role? Jennifer asked. I'll remain majority shareholder and board chair, but I have no interest in day-to-day operations. I smiled. I'm going back to school to finish my degree, business administration, with a focus on corporate ethics. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The woman Derek claimed couldn't understand business was now restructuring his company while pursuing the education he'd denied her. There's also the matter of the Harrison name, Linda added. Maya has the right to force a rebrand. I'd thought about this. Part of me wanted to erase Derek's name entirely, but my daughters carried that name too. We'll keep it, I decided. But it will mean something different now. Harrison Development will be known for ethical practices and supporting women-owned businesses. We're establishing a foundation for women recovering from financial abuse. The board voted unanimously. Of course they did. I owned 65% of the company, but their enthusiasm seemed genuine. Derek's reign of fear was over. The coffee shop in Worthington was quiet on a Tuesday afternoon. Sophie and Emma sat across from me, hot chocolates growing cold as we talked, really talked, for the first time in months. Dad's lawyer says he might go to prison, Emma said quietly. He might, I acknowledged. What he did was criminal. But you're not happy about it, Sophie observed, studying my face. She was right. I felt no joy in Derek's downfall, only relief that the truth was finally known. I loved your father once, I told them honestly. Part of me grieves for the man I thought he was, but that doesn't excuse what he did to us. He kept telling us you were unstable, Emma's voice cracked, that you didn't really want us. But Mom, we knew something was wrong. The way he talked about you, it was so cruel. Sophie reached for my hand. We wrote you letters, dozens of them, but Dad said you wouldn't want to read them. My heart broke and mended simultaneously. I would have treasured every word. Can we come home? Emma asked, tears falling. Not to California, I know that's gone. But wherever you are? You never have to ask that, I pulled them close. You're my daughters. My home is wherever you are. We sat there for an hour, rebuilding bridges Derek had tried to burn. They told me about the therapy they'd started, about the guilt they carried for believing his lies. I told them about Grandma's secret strength, about the inheritance waiting for them, about the future we'd build together. Mom, Sophie asked eventually, what Dad did was wrong, but are you going to be okay? Really okay? I thought about everything I'd lost and found. Yes, I said truthfully. We all are. The mediation room was sterile, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Derek sat across from me, orange jumpsuit replacing his designer suits. His lawyer had requested this meeting to discuss custody arrangements before his sentencing. The girls don't want to see me, he said, voice hollow. They need time, I replied evenly. You lied to them for months. I never meant... He stopped, perhaps realizing how hollow any excuse would sound. Maya, I'm sorry. I studied him. This man who'd controlled my life for 15 years, who'd tried to destroy me completely. The apology meant nothing, but I needed to set terms. You'll have supervised visitation once a month if the girls agree, I stated. You'll attend therapy, real therapy, not the performance you gave the court, and you'll never, ever speak badly about me to our daughters again. That's fair, his lawyer interjected quickly. It's generous, Linda corrected. Given the parental alienation charges, Ms. Harrison could push for complete termination of parental rights. Derek flinched. Please don't take them completely. They're all I have left. They were all I had too, I reminded him. You tried to take them anyway. Silence stretched between us. Finally, I leaned forward. Derek, I'm not you. I won't use our daughters as weapons, but if you ever try to manipulate them again, if you ever attempt to turn them against me, I will end your access permanently. Are we clear? Crystal, he whispered. Good. I stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope you learn from this. Our daughters deserve a father who's capable of genuine love, not control. As I walked out, I heard him crying. I didn't look back. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. They can only be replaced with boundaries. The Columbus Dispatch ran the headline, Real Estate Mogul Faces 15 Years for Fraud. Below it, Derek's mugshot looked nothing like the confident businessman from the launch event. Within days, the dominoes fell. 3 former business partners came forward with similar stories of financial manipulation. His country club revoked his membership. Madison disappeared, taking what jewelry she could before the assets were frozen. The empire Derek built on stolen foundations crumbled completely. He's agreed to plead guilty, Linda informed me over lunch. 5 to 7 years, with restitution to all victims. Including the investors? Especially them. The forensic accountants found more hidden accounts. There's enough to make everyone whole, barely. I thought about justice, how it sometimes comes in unexpected forms. Derek would serve time, but more importantly, his reputation, the thing he valued most, was destroyed. In the business community he'd worked so hard to impress, his name had become synonymous with fraud. There's something else, Linda added. Local women's shelters have been calling. Your story has inspired dozens of women to seek help for financial abuse. That afternoon, I received an email from a stranger. Ms. Harrison, I've been trapped in a marriage where my husband controls every penny. Your story gave me hope that there's a way out. Thank you for showing us that we don't have to stay small. By week's end, I'd received over 300 similar messages. Women sharing stories of financial control, emotional manipulation, systematic erasure, each one breaking my heart and strengthening my resolve. We need to do more, I told Linda. The foundation isn't enough. What do you have in mind? Free legal clinics, financial literacy programs, Safe houses for women escaping financial abuse. I pulled out Mom's journal. My mother built her empire to protect me. Now it's my turn to protect others. The story went viral within a month. Woman discovers $50 inheritance, exposes ex-husband's fraud at his own event, spread across social media like wildfire. News outlets called it the ultimate divorce revenge, though revenge had never been my goal. I did exactly one interview with a respected financial journalist who focused on the economic abuse aspect rather than the drama. Women need to know the warning signs, I told her. When someone isolates you financially, controls your spending, makes you dependent, that's abuse. It's just harder to see the bruises. The response was overwhelming. My inbox flooded with stories, requests for help, and thank you messages from women who'd found courage in my experience. Sophie and Emma helped me read them, their own understanding deepening with each story. Mom, this is bigger than just Dad, Sophie said one evening. This happens everywhere. She was right. The Eleanor Chen Foundation for Financial Freedom launched 6 weeks after the launch event. Jennifer Walsh, now CEO of Harrison Development, pledged the company's full support. Even Robert Sterling, after recovering his investment, contributed significantly. Your mother would be proud, he told me at the foundation's opening. She saw all of this coming, didn't she? I thought about Mom's letter, her careful planning, her patient accumulation of power. She knew that sometimes you have to build your strength in silence, but she also knew when silence had to end. The Foundation's first financial literacy workshop filled within hours. Women from every economic background came to learn about hidden assets, financial rights, and recognizing economic abuse. Emma designed the Foundation's logo, a phoenix rising from a maze, representing both rebirth and finding your way out of confusion. We're helping people, Mom, she said proudly, really helping them. We were. And it was just the beginning. 1 year later, I walked across the stage at Ohio State University to receive my bachelor's degree. At 43, I was hardly the traditional graduate, but Sophie and Emma cheered louder than anyone when they called my name. Maya Harrison, Bachelor of Business Administration, summa cum laude. The dean shook my hand warmly. She knew my story. Everyone did by then, but what mattered was that I'd earned this on my own merit. Every test, every paper, every late night studying while rebuilding our lives. Harrison Development had transformed under Jennifer's leadership. The company now led the industry in ethical practices and had launched an initiative to fund women-owned construction businesses. The name that once represented Derek's ego now stood for integrity and inclusion. I'd moved us into a modest but beautiful home in Columbus. Not a mansion like California, but something better. A place chosen by me, paid for with clean money, filled with truth instead of pretense. I got into Northwestern, Sophie announced at dinner that night, acceptance letter in hand. Pre-law with a focus on financial crimes. And I'm starting a podcast, Emma added, about women overcoming financial abuse. Mom, would you be my first guest? Looking at my daughters, confident, purposeful, unashamed, I saw my mother's legacy fully realized. Not just the money she'd left, but the strength she'd modeled. The power to build kingdoms in silence and strike when necessary. Derek had written me recently from prison. A real apology this time, facilitated by his therapy program. I didn't respond, but I didn't burn it either. Some transformations deserve witnessing, even from a distance. Yes, I told Emma. I'd be honored. That night, I found one last letter from Mom, hidden in her journal's back cover. Just one line. Power isn't about what you can take. It's about what you can build after everything's been taken. Standing before 200 women at the Foundation's annual gala, I thought about the journey from that basement in Ohio to this podium in downtown Columbus. We're told that our worth comes from degrees, from titles, from what others think of us, I began. I believed that for 15 years, Without a college degree, without a career, without my husband's approval, I thought I was nothing. The room was silent, every woman leaning forward. But worth isn't granted by others, it's inherent. My mother knew this. She built an empire while letting the world think she was just a school teacher. Not for deception, but for protection. Because she understood that sometimes power needs to grow in darkness before it can bloom in light. I looked at Sophie and Emma in the front row, both now advocates for financial abuse awareness. The man who tried to erase me is in prison, but this isn't a revenge story. It's a story about discovering that the power to rebuild your life doesn't come from degrees or bank accounts or anyone's permission. It comes from recognizing your inherent worth and refusing to let anyone make you small. A woman in the back stood up, then another, then dozens. The standing ovation wasn't for me. It was for every woman who'd been financially controlled, emotionally diminished, systematically erased, and had found the strength to rebuild. Your worth, I continued once they'd settled, isn't determined by what you've achieved or what you've lost. It's not measured by degrees or dollars. You are valuable simply because you exist, and anyone who tries to convince you otherwise is revealing their own emptiness, not yours. Later, signing books about financial empowerment, woman after woman whispered their stories, each one a reminder that my mother's gift wasn't just money, it was the proof that power can grow anywhere, even in basements and shadows. Mom, I have something to tell you, Sophie said over coffee, 3 years after that night at the Meridian Center. She was in her second year at Northwestern Law, Emma finishing high school with plans for journalism school. I'm writing a book, she continued, about you, about Grandma, about how women build power in silence and use it when the moment comes. I set down my cup carefully. Sophie. I've already interviewed 50 women from the foundation. Each one has a story of financial resurrection. But yours shows that sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the knowledge that you were always powerful. You just needed to remember it. Emma pulled out her laptop. We're doing it together. Sophie's writing. I'm producing the documentary. We want to call it The Inheritance, a story of hidden power. My daughters, barely adults, had become warriors for women's financial freedom. They spoke at colleges about recognizing economic abuse. They volunteered at the foundation. They'd transformed their pain into purpose. Dad's getting out next year, Emma mentioned quietly. Early release for good behavior. We'd maintained careful contact through his incarceration. The girls visited monthly, slowly rebuilding some form of relationship. He'd completed multiple therapy programs, written genuine letters of accountability, even contributed to the foundation from his prison job earnings. How do you feel about that? I asked them. He's our father, Sophie said simply. But he'll never have power over any of us again. We know the signs now. We know our worth. That evening, I found them in Emma's room, surrounded by interview transcripts and research materials. My mother's journal lay open between them, her careful handwriting visible. She knew, Sophie said, looking up. Grandma knew this would ripple outward, that her gift would protect not just you, but hundreds of women. Eleanor Chen, the quiet revolutionary. Her legacy lived on in every woman who learned to build power in shadows and strike like lightning. 5 years after finding that safe, I stood in my mother's cleaned and renovated basement, now my home office. The musty smell was gone, replaced by fresh paint and possibility. The wall where the safe had been now held a portrait of Mom, her knowing smile watching over everything. Derek had been released, found work at a small accounting firm that specialized in helping fraud victims recover assets. Ironic, perhaps, but genuine. He lived quietly, saw the girls regularly, and never challenged the boundaries I'd set. You saved my life, he'd said during our last mediation. Prison taught me what I'd become. I'm grateful you stopped me when you did. I didn't forgive him, some wounds run too deep, but I acknowledged his transformation. People can change, even if relationships can't be restored. The Eleanor Chen Foundation had helped over 3,000 women escape financial abuse. Sophie passed the bar exam, joining Linda's firm to specialize in economic justice. Emma's documentary won awards, spreading our story globally. But tonight was quiet. Just me in the basement where everything changed. I opened Mom's journal to the last entry. Maya, my darling daughter, by the time you read this, you'll have discovered that power isn't loud or cruel or controlling. Real power whispers. It builds. It waits. It protects. And when the moment comes, it doesn't seek revenge. It seeks justice. Use what I've left you not to punish, but to prevent others from suffering as you have. Build something beautiful from the ashes. A text from Emma interrupted my thoughts. Mom, the publisher wants to know if you'll write the foreword for Sophie's book. I smiled, thinking of all the women who'd shared their stories, who'd found strength in their darkest moments, who'd discovered they were never powerless, just temporarily convinced otherwise. Yes, I texted back. I know exactly what to say. My mother taught me that real power whispers until it's time to roar. If you're facing financial control, emotional manipulation, or any form of abuse that makes you feel small, please know you're stronger than you realize. Your worth isn't determined by anyone else's opinion or actions. Comment, strength, if this story resonated with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone. And remember, sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money, but the knowledge that you are always powerful. Subscribe for more stories of resilience and transformation. You matter. Your story matters. Never let anyone convince you otherwise.